Florida is a flat, warm, thoroughly waterlogged peninsula, where the line between land and swamp often exists only on a county map, not in the ground beneath your feet. It was in water just like that, in 2010, that hunters pulled a 14-foot, 3.5-inch alligator out of Lake Washington in Brevard County, the official state record verified by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. The photo made the local news. People stood next to the animal and looked like children standing next to an adult. Its head was wider than a man's shoulders, and its tail took up half the bed of the truck they eventually loaded it onto, a sight locals specifically drove out to the boat ramp to see the whole next day. And that's not even the only large predator in the local water. Florida is the only place on the planet where alligators naturally share habitat with true crocodiles, narrower snouted, more skittish, but on average larger animals. Male American crocodiles officially grow to 20 feet and nearly a ton, making them the longest living reptile in North America. You'd think that was the ceiling. Surely nothing gets bigger than that, and anything past it is just myth and old fishing stories. But Florida has a much longer memory buried underfoot than 100-odd years of official hunting records. And by that memory, even a 20-foot crocodile is just a contemporary, not the record holder of all time. Ask a Floridian what the largest thing that ever crawled across this land was, and almost everyone will say the modern alligator, or at best, the crocodile. That's a reasonable answer, and completely wrong at the same time. 80 million years isn't some abstract textbook number. It's a depth of time in which the entire history of Homo sapiens takes up less than 1/100%. Over that stretch, continents have had time to shift, seas have dried up and refilled, and the very definition of largest animal has changed hands more than once. Over the past 80+ million years, at least 2 species of crocodilomorph have passed through what's now Florida and its immediate surroundings, either one of which would have made today's record holders a quick snack if, of course, they'd shared the same era. Subscribe if you like finding out that modern records are just the tip of the iceberg. And tell me in the comments, out of the predators on this list, which one do you think would have been the most dangerous to an actual person if we'd lived alongside it? Let's start with the most recent layer, the one you can actually weigh and photograph. Florida's official record is that same 14 feet 3.5 inches caught by hunter Robert Ammerman in Lake Washington in 2010. It's a recognized figure, documented, weighed, photographed in front of the local news cameras. Records like that don't just happen. Once a year, Florida runs a regulated alligator hunting season when licensed hunters take the biggest individuals, and the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission officially weighs and measures every record claim. But the state also has an unofficial memory that goes a lot further back than the official record. In 1890, naturalist Ned McElhenney came across a dying alligator and, by his own account, measured it with his gun barrel, 19 feet 2 inches. His standing in the scientific community was high enough that the story was taken at face value, except he never brought back a hide, a skull, or a single piece of physical evidence. Around the same time, a Louisiana game warden named Max Touche killed an alligator that had to be skinned right there in the boat. The animal was too big to haul aboard whole. The hide was later used to estimate a length of 17 feet 10 inches. And the Everglades National Park website still officially cites 17 feet 5 inches as the largest alligator ever recorded in Florida, just over 3 feet longer than the 2010 sport record. Science can't confirm those numbers, and it never will. Without a physical specimen, a gun barrel measurement is folklore, not paleontology. The official record only recognizes what can actually be weighed. But even taking the most conservative, officially recognized figure, it's already describing an animal that, next to the real giants of the past, would look like an oversized teenager. The second layer of legend belongs not to the alligator, but to its neighbor in the swamp. Crocodiles in Central and South America, the closest relatives of Florida's population, regularly grow past 20 feet, with a few documented cases pushing close to 23. Unlike the alligator, which almost never leaves fresh water, the crocodile is just as at home in saltwater mangrove lagoons and open ocean channels between islands, which means not just a bigger animal, but an animal with far more range to actually reach its limit. By the mid-20th century, crocodiles had nearly been wiped out along the Florida coast. The hide was so valuable on the leather market that hunting drove the population down to a couple hundred individuals, and the species was granted federal endangered protection back in the 1970s. Today's roughly 2,000 individuals aren't some natural baseline. They're the result of half a century of protection, mangrove nurseries, and poaching fines. Last fall, a 10-foot crocodile turned up in a canal in Satellite Beach, more than 200 miles north of the Everglades, well outside where the species used to be seen at all. Locals who'd never seen a live crocodile before spent weeks discussing the find in neighborhood group chats until wildlife officials confirmed, yes, it really was a crocodile and not a large alligator, and yes, the species really is pushing north faster than expected. In other words, even among living species, Florida still hasn't seen its real ceiling. It's just slowly clawing its way back after being nearly erased, creeping toward the places it was once pushed out of. We're at the halfway point between the present and the truly ancient, and from here it's fossil history all the way down. If you've made it this far, now's a good time to subscribe. It only gets bigger from here. Now we get into a real, fossil-confirmed chapter. Somewhere between 13 and 6 million years ago, during the Miocene, Florida was home to a species called Cretaceous americana, the American false gharial, a close relative of today's Malaysian false gharial, with a narrow, elongated snout built specifically for catching fish rather than hunting large land prey. The officially recognized size for the species is around 20 feet, already roughly on par with the largest living crocodile. But in 1990, a phosphate mine in Polk County turned up a skull 49 inches long, the most complete and largest specimen of the species ever found. Scaled from that skull, the animal's total length is estimated at around 25 feet, with some calculations pushing it as high as 30, noticeably bigger than any crocodile alive today. Its modern descendant, the Malaysian false gharial, isn't doing nearly as well. The species is critically endangered, and ironically, its fossil Florida relative was once not just bigger, but far more successful as the top predator of an entire coastal ecosystem. And the Florida species wasn't some local fluke either. Very similar false gharials of roughly the same age have turned up in both Austria and Portugal, meaning that around 15 million years ago, an entire family of large fish-eating crocodiles was confident enough to cross an ocean and settle on both sides of it at once. There's a funny postscript to this story. In 1944, paleontologist Remington Kellogg described a similar fossil as the remains of a giant extinct dolphin and even gave it a suitably grand name, Megalodelphis magnetans, the big-toothed megadolphin. For decades, the species sat on the books as a marine mammal, an oversized whale from the warm Miocene seas. It wasn't until 2016 that a fresh look at the jaw revealed the truth. There was no dolphin. It was Cretaceous again, just a jaw fragment large and oddly built enough that a cetacean specialist mistook a crocodile for a relative of whales. And the reason these skulls keep turning up in bulk is that Polk County spent the entire 20th century industrially mining phosphate for fertilizer. Excavators tore through the Miocene layers of the Bone Valley Formation dozens of feet at a time, and along with the phosphate ore, megalodon teeth, whale bones, and crocodile skulls all came up to the surface with it. The very same blue and orange shark teeth sold to collectors worldwide today were dug out of the exact same layer of ground as the skulls of these giant false gharials. Florida quite literally dug up a piece of its own prehistoric past while chasing fertilizer for its orange groves, and it's still digging it up today, though access to active mine sites is now tightly restricted. And here's an honest caveat before the last and biggest chapter. no confirmed Deinosuchus fossils have actually turned up in what is now Florida. Blame the peninsula's geology. Cretaceous age rock from that period barely reaches the surface anywhere in the state, buried under much younger limestone, so there's simply nowhere for a find to be exposed. The reason is that for most of the Cretaceous, the future Florida wasn't land at all. It was a shallow limestone platform under a warm sea. The land we know today didn't form until much later, once younger layers of limestone built up on top. The older the layer, the deeper it's buried under the state's own geological history. But the climate and ecosystem Deinosuchus actually lived in was exactly the coastal, subtropical world we call Florida today, and its remains turn up right next door, most often in Georgia, and also in Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Montana, New Jersey, and several other states that once ringed the ancient Western Interior Seaway, which paleontologists half-jokingly nicknamed Hell's Aquarium for its sheer density of predators per square mile. Sharing that sea with Deinosuchus were mosasaurs the size of a bus and sharks every bit as large as today's great whites. And even in that company, the giant crocodilians still managed to remain the top predator of the coastline specifically, because it could hunt just as effectively in open water as it could right at the water's edge, territory no marine reptile could follow it into. The first Deinosuchus tooth turned up back in 1858 in North Carolina, but it was mistakenly identified as belonging to a pliosaur, a marine reptile. It wasn't properly identified and described as its own genus until 1909. Then, in 2020, paleontologists split off another distinct species from those same southern finds, Deinosuchus schwimmeri, with teeth researchers literally compared in size to bananas. Picture the late Cretaceous coastline for a second. A warm, shallow sea, stands of araucaria and swamp cypress, and in that water, something the length of 2 SUVs parked end to end, capable of dragging a ton of prey underwater with a single twist of its neck. 80 to 73 million years ago, in the late Cretaceous, Deinosuchus was the apex predator of an entire continent. Size estimates vary, and not just because the fossils are incomplete. The disagreement is baked into the method itself. Scale the length off the proportions of a modern alligator's skull, and you get those same 33 to 40-foot figures for the largest Western individuals. Base it on femur thickness instead, and the numbers come out noticeably more modest, somewhere around 20 to 26 feet. Until someone finds a genuinely complete skeleton, both methods are still technically on the table, and most paleontologists today would rather talk about a range than commit to one precise number. Even on the most conservative estimate, the eastern populations, the ones found most often, and the ones geographically closest to modern Florida, still come out to nearly twice the length of the official Brevard County record, and longer than the largest known false gharial skull to boot. Growth ring studies in Deinosuchus bones suggest it could live to 50 years old, and that it packed on mass at roughly the same rate as modern crocodiles do. It just took several times longer to actually reach its final size than it would for any living relative. Its thick teeth were built less for puncturing and more for crushing. And that's not a metaphor. Dinosaur bones from the period carry bite marks that match the shape of its jaws exactly, and its presumed fossilized droppings have turned up containing fragments of large sea turtle shells. Even the remains of Appalachiosaurus, a predatory dinosaur that lived in those same coastal forests, carry marks best explained by an encounter with Deinosuchus, one that clearly didn't end in the dinosaur's favor. In fairness, even Deinosuchus isn't the undisputed champion among the planet's giant crocodilomorphs. In South America, tens of millions of years after the dinosaurs went extinct, there was a caiman called Purosaurus, whose size estimates have swung nearly as wildly over the years as Deinosuchus's own, anywhere from a modest 25 feet to almost 43. depending on the study and the year it was published. Purosaurus didn't live alone either. The banks of that same ancient Amazon system were home to ground sloths nearly the height of a giraffe and rodents the size of a small hippo. An entire continent of its own giants, later wiped out almost completely by a shifting climate, leaving only their far more modest descendants behind. Paleontologists still haven't settled the argument over which of the two, Deinosuchus or Purosaurus, was actually bigger. But as far as Florida and its immediate neighbors go, there's nothing to argue about. Nothing bigger or more dangerous than Deinosuchus ever lived there, before or since. Here's what's worth taking away from all this. The Brevard County alligator is an animal worth pulling over for and not approaching any closer than good sense allows. But by geological standards, it's practically a baby. Next to the 20-foot crocodile, it would just be a somewhat smaller neighbor. Next to the false gharial from the Polk County phosphate mines, it would look like a teenager. And next to Deinosuchus, whose teeth crushed turtle shells and dinosaur bones, it wouldn't even count as a fully grown predator, more like a snack that happened to end up in the wrong pond at the wrong time. Florida likes to bill itself as the land of the continent's biggest reptiles, and the state isn't exactly wrong about that. It's just the verb tense that needs fixing. The continent's biggest reptiles don't live here. They lived here, and on a scale so extreme that the modern Brevard County record is just the last, most modest line in a very long list. One that started being written 80 million years before the first official record ever existed. Next time someone standing by the water tells you that alligator in the lake looks like a real monster, feel free to agree politely, and add that the monsters of the past would have considered it a snack, and that you can only see those old monsters today as a skull under glass in a museum, or scattered bones in a state geological survey storage room.